Infinite banking, as described in the book Becoming Your Own Banker, while it's available to everyone, it's only for a very few amount of people, because as you can imagine, when we're talking about this use it or lose it and developing new habits, all of that requires you to get out of your comfort zone. Hey guys, welcome to the Sound Banking Podcast. My name is Kyle Reese. This is Raymond Ward. Today we are talking about the last human problem in the Becoming Your Own Banker book. This one is Use It or Lose It. And Raymond was sharing just before we turned on the screen that there was some great insight that he got from Nelson when he was going back through that 6.5 hour course that he recorded of his old seminars. If you haven't watched those, definitely take some time to go through that. There's so much in there that you will get just because of who Nelson was that you can't get from the book Becoming Your Own Banker. But yeah, Raymond, take it away. What'd you
Right.
learn?
Yeah. Well, let me just say first, I'm going to reiterate what you said. I know I repeat things every now and then, but I got to say, I think this is probably one of the best investments that you could make is purchasing that 6.5 hour seminar that he gives. It was a 2 day seminar, and they compressed it to 6.5 hours. Um, but there's an interesting story that he tells about a guy by the name of Dan Rust that you won't see in the book here. Dan Rust was somebody that had gone to a lot of his seminars, knew him really well, and he brought his brother-in-law, who was from St. George, Utah, and Dan Rust was from Salt Lake. And anyway, this brother-in-law's name was Jim, and Nelson felt like he was coming. This guy was coming because he was a financial guy, and he was coming to, poo-poo what he was talking about because this guy is going to talk to me about life insurance. And but the guy was kind enough, gentleman enough to listen for the 2 days, and then at the very end, this gentleman says to Nelson, "Hey, do you mind if I address the group?" And he said, "Yes, go right ahead." And Jim gets up and says, "I don't know how many of you know this, but this this is acts just like a trust. What you're talking about. You have the grantor, a trustee, and a beneficiary. It's a trust." And I thought that, I, if you think about it, yes, it acts just like a trust. It's like creating a trust. Um, and the trustee, who is the insurance company, has got to put the money to work to grow the wealth inside of the product. Anyway, that I thought that was great that the guy at first came to poo-poo it and turned around, and in my opinion, that's like saying this is really a great product. Um, anyway, and I would, as you're listening to this thing, Nelson. This is kind of off the subject a little bit, but Nelson's talking about back in the 1600s how insurance came about, and I guess it was a bunch of wealthy guys sitting at the coffee shop, I'll call it, day in and day out, and they were sitting on the shoreline and watching ships come in and out of the dock area. And as Nelson kind of chuckles and says, and it only took another 200 years for somebody to get it in their head that you can actually create whole life. So anyway, I thought that was
And it's a
pretty
great
cool.
thing that
But
they did, because they finally realized that that life and, well, I should say that death is not a matter of if, whereas everything else that can be insured is a matter of if, right?
right, yeah,
Death is a matter of when. And so to make life insurance specifically able to be cover the entire life means that you're actually going to capitalize on it and it I don't know, it's just a lot better. A
Yeah,
lot more
yeah,
guarantees when you go that route.
yeah, the long term, and these guys that were thinking about it said, well, maybe if we just charge 6 or 7 times more than we do for term, we can put the extra money to work, and that's what they did. And here we are, whole life insurance.
It's crazy.
So this is a great subject. I think most people have heard the phrase "use it or lose it," um, and you can apply it. I think you can apply it to there's umpteen different things you can apply it to. I think what he inside this little article, this one pager, he's talking about use it or lose it, and he references this EVA, the economic value added, and use it or lose it. I was thinking of it as that EVA had been around and come and gone so many times in history. Um, it was something that people had thought about 400 years ago, or more, that there is a cost to capital, and then it would people would stop using it, and it would just float away, and everybody would forget about it, and
Hmm.
then somebody else would bring it back, and then it would float away. And then, with this article that he mentions that was in the September 1993 issue of Fortune magazine, the what's the name of the company here that brought it back? Stearns, is that what it is? What is it? Stearns Stewart's out of New York City bring it back, and they actually made lots of money coaching high level executives as to what it was, how to figure out what the cost of your own capital inside of your corporation is, because there is cost. And he points out in his video, you're over here, you're paying the bank interest, but you're not paying yourself anything. You're not holding yourself accountable for anything. And when companies did that, um, their stock would rise, because investors would see that they were becoming more profitable, and then the stock would go up because everybody was buying it because it's going up. I mean, and the point of it is that's the same thing that we are supposed to be doing inside these policies. When we take a loan, pay it back, set up a schedule, pay it back. Yeah. So anyway,
And it's not just about paying it back at whatever, right? It's about paying it back
right,
at market rate interest or above market rate interest. And why not? Because it's something that you own and control. You would have had to pay that anyways. So just do it, right? Use it or
right,
lose it. This is where like the rubber meets the road for all of these other problems, right? We've got the arrival syndrome, we've got Willie Sutton's law, we've got the golden rule, right? And then we
yeah,
have the Parkinson's law, and all of these problems are things that really keep us as humans where we are. They make us either afraid of going and doing something, or they actually create obstacles for us to go and do those things. And in order to make sure that like we're applying all of these principles, you got to go do something about it now, right? Because if you don't act now, then it doesn't matter what you just read.
right,
We don't act
right.
on things that we read 6 months ago. We act on things that we read today or yesterday, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I
And
I,
and
I
and
like this one. It's just short and to the point. Go ahead.
yeah, and there are another way to look at it too is that what we think about. In other words, you learn all these concepts: Parkinson's law, Willie Sutton, golden rule, rival, and then use it or lose it. You learn all these things, and as you are stating, you don't necessarily, if you don't use them, you lose them again. In other words, what you focus on, if you're focusing on trying to beat these things, you'll be thinking about it, and what you think about grows.
Hmm.
So what's the opposite of use it or lose it? Is use it and it will grow within us.
I like
Uh,
that. Yeah.
it, you have to put your intention on it and stick with it too, because these forces are, they're like noxious weeds. They're always working to take over, you know, take over the garden that's up in your brain. It never stops. It's not as powerful as you, but it's tenacious. It just never stops. So you have to be cognizant and intentional about it.
So, what would
Um,
be some of the ways that people would use their IBC policies?
you mean as far as like using it or losing it? Well, the other thing that I think about when I think about this is that using your policy, in other words, depending on what your comfort level is with risk and all this other stuff. Say you started a policy a year ago and you have a certain amount of cash value, and you and I both know that we have cash value pretty immediate, within a couple of weeks or less. You have cash value, some cash value in there with the way that we design these things. But certainly in a year, 2 years, 3 years, you have some cash value. And instead of it just sitting there, you might start looking for a place to either investing it in whatever it is that you want. Maybe you want to buy a little something that that you're going to buy it at a lower cost, and then you're going to be able to sell it later for a profit. In other words, keep the money moving. Don't just let it sit there. It's got to flow in order to be intentional about it. Um, don't just go make an investment just for the sake of it, but be thinking about it. And again, what you think about grows. So if you're thinking about it, those opportunities will come forth. In my opinion, the universe will bring them to you. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you note that, like, once you have cash value in there, whether it's 2 weeks or 3 years, right? Some people can only start with so much premium. It might be a few $100s a month.
yeah.
There's not a whole lot of great noteworthy investments that you can get with a couple $100s of cash value, right? So you're
Mm,
going to have to build that up. You have to capitalize your system for a period of time, as opposed to the person who starts a policy with $100,000 premium. Right away, they've got, let's just call it $40,000 of cash value. They can, I'm sorry, $60,000 of cash value. They could go take that cash value and and go get a loan from a bank, and with those two, or sorry, let me back up. You could take that 60,000 of cash value. You could take a loan from the insurance company. You have that cash sitting there, and you can use that as a down payment on a piece of real estate, on a whatever it might be. If it's to open a business venture, start a new franchise, something that you're familiar with, whatever it is that is unique to you, whatever is um, something that something about. Take that
right.
money as soon as you have availability to it, and go put it to work. Because if you don't have velocity of money, if you don't have money in motion, it will die. Period. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. IBC
Right.
is not a set it and forget it strategy. Now,
Right.
you
Yeah.
can put money into a whole life policy if your intent is to just use it as a savings program. Fine. That's all it will ever be. And that's all you'll ever be, is somebody who puts money into a savings program. If you want to be a banker, if you want to inflict real change and provide real opportunity to other people in your network, or in your community, in your state, whatever it might be, don't let money sit. Okay, take it and go invest it in something that you know about.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I I thought it was interesting that you know that article came out in 1993, September 1993, and then a couple of years later, um, another article came out. What was it? Let's see, what was the date on that? That was May 1st, 1995. I think in the book, he mentions that it's 19. Yeah, there it is, May 1995. And the second one that came out, the second article says that just starts right off. EVA works. And when I say EVA, and when Kyle's saying EVA, we're talking about the additional interest that you're going to pay yourself back with. Okay, so that's the same thing. But in this article, it says EVA works, but not if you make these common mistakes. And these common mistakes are human factors. They're human factors. They're they're you don't make it a way of life. You you don't implement you try to implement it too fast. You lack conviction. You fuss about it too much. You get in the weeds, uh, and then you don't give yourself enough time to really understand why you're doing this.
Or you don't have somebody in your life that is helping you understand why you're doing this, because someone might give themselves a lot of time like I did at the first couple years of my life. I was diving into all of this, but I had no idea that it had something to do with velocity of money. All I knew was life insurance was cool, and whole life insurance was cooler, and
I
and
love that.
and it was a great place to capitalize, and there's guarantees, and guarantees don't exist hardly anywhere. I was fixated on that. I was spending tons of time, but I didn't have the right mentor helping me understand how to take that and then go multiply it. And that's
Yeah,
that's critical, right? And
yeah,
Nelson even starts this section off with Mark 25, for he that hath, to him that shall be given, and he that does not have, from him shall be taken even that which he has. So
yeah.
yeah, it's one thing to have it, it's another thing uh, to have it and be using it, because if you're not using it, then like
Well,
it indicates you're going to lose it.
it gets stagnant. It begins to rot in a sense. Um, that like if a river is flowing um, in certain parts of the world, it can clean itself. But if it's stagnant, that's when pollution it starts to pollute itself, or things can pollute it. So it's really
Hmm.
important for things to flow. Um, water's got to flow, money's got to flow, our bloods flow, and we're always replenishing. I mean, we're mostly water, right? Um, and so even the water on Earth, it flows through us. It's flowing everywhere, and money is the same thing. If you shut it off, just think of this, and Nelson mentions this. If you shut off the banking function on the globe, even just for a few days, can you imagine what it would be like if all commerce, everything stopped, just stopped? Mayhem. It would be it
Holy
would be
moly.
it would be crazy. So it has to flow. And if it's flowing out in the world to keep, I'll just say, keep the peace, um, don't you think that there's something there that, you might want to consider, that your money should be flowing to your capital? I'm not talking about money to buy the groceries and the gasoline. We're talking about capital that's for capital investment. That's why these corporations were so interested in it, because they're buying capital equipment, they're buying all these things to run their business, and they all have costs. And if they're just sitting around, we used that last year, but we haven't used it in the last 12 months, and it costs us $1 million. These companies started to get rid of stuff like that. They st-
Yeah.
and the operating profits went up. And again, as soon as guys, investors, investors that I consider real true investors, where they really go look at the company, look inside their books and all that stuff, they say these guys are profitable and it's growing. I'm going to invest in this company, and because they're underpriced. And anyway, and that's what, and in the second article, that's what they talk about, is that these companies did just that. Um, and they're major corporations: Coca-Cola, Briggs and Stratton, Quaker Oats. List
Wow.
goes on and on. The other thing in the article, because we're going to put the links to the articles in the show notes. Uh, the thing about it is, what was, oh, I'm losing my train of thought here. Um, maybe it'll come back to me. Maybe it'll come back.
Oh, you're good. Nelson said that accepting a totally new point of reference means that you must develop new habits. I don't know if, well, if any of you guys, our listeners, haven't read the book Atomic Habits, that's a great one to start with, because it's all about the daily things that you're doing to change your life. Like, we can have goals and aspirations as much as we want, but if we don't actually do things on a daily basis that help us get there, if we don't change our habits, we're not going to change, or we're not going to achieve those things unless they're really small goals, but assuming the goals are big. And so when I came to infinite banking originally, I had a belief that infinite banking was for everyone. And the reason why was because I was a I was a average paid corporate guy who didn't want to invest in stuff, and I saw this as a place that I could actually put money, and um and it would be safe, right? That's all I wanted. I wanted some guarantees and I wanted some safety. Well, if that's all you're looking for, then this provides that. But infinite banking, as described in the book Becoming Your Own Banker, while it's available to everyone, it's only for a very few amount of people, because, as you can imagine, when we're talking about this use it or lose it and developing new habits, all of that requires you to get out of your comfort zone. And it takes a lot of character to be willing to do that. You have to defeat all of these other human laws or human problems in order to be successful as a banker. And if you
Yeah,
mess that up, you're in deep weeds.
yeah, um, yeah. But and the thing I'll say about that is, it's a good point, but also we are always working on these five things. We're always
Mm,
working on Parkinson's law. We're always working on Willie Sutton and the Golden Rule. It's something that comes and goes, right? You think you got it whipped, and then you see it coming. If you're paying attention, you'll see it coming inside you. So we're always having to be cognizant and aware of our thinking. Um, and you can start, but you can start anytime, and continue to grow in these places, against these human factors.
right.
Um, yeah,
And hey, I'm a great example of somebody who just started where I was at, and I've come a lot further than where I was. I came to it with an inappropriate perspective of infinite banking. Even at the beginning, I started my policy with an inappropriate understanding of infinite banking and what I was getting into. And yeah, because I'm willing to overcome Parkinson's law, Willie Sutton's law, the arrival syndrome, um, and the golden rule, right? I'm able to continue to develop and enhance my understanding of it, and therefore apply it better. Therefore, I'm not going to lose it, right? It's just going to get better and better and better. So it doesn't
right.
matter if you start with the right perspective. It Yeah. So some of my mentors, they like to say, would you rather start first or end first? Look, as long as you are on the
That's
right
great.
path, getting closer to that finish line, it doesn't matter when you start. Just start sooner rather than later.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The sooner you can start, like I started at 67, it's still a good time for me to start. But boy, I wish I had started when I was 47 or 27.
Yeah.
But here I am, and I'm still very grateful that I had started. Um,
Yeah.
so,
I think I started mine when I was 23 or 24,
oh, are
somewhere in
you trying
there.
to rub it in
And
here?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I I'm 28 now, but I wish I would have started when I was 2. The opportunities I'm able to provide for my children who are, we just had our fourth one last month. The opportunities I'm able to provide for them by starting policies for them now is just so much greater than any it's fun to think about, but it's way greater than anything I ever had. So, yeah, you can
Yeah,
always have started earlier.
yeah. When you put it like that, that's a great way to put it. But when you put it like that, it made me think of uh, Nelson talking about his forestry days and helping private landowners um, develop the land. And he would say, well, you have to select cut, this acreage, and then next year it's this acreage, and then it's this acreage, and you have to get in. So you're doing a number of acreages that different. You're doing different things to them, and then you get to a point where when you go for the big harvest out of one section, it's just phenomenal. And can you imagine what that is, what it grows to? So
Hmm.
with your kids, when they're my age and they're teaching their grandkids, uh, they won't even be going to the banks anymore at that point, let alone the grandkids or their own kids.
Yeah.
That Yeah, it becomes. I guess it would become like a family office, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
why
you'd be
not?
you'd be you'd be looking for investments.
Thank you for joining us on the Sound Banking Podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on the notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for more content.